Guided a struggling Learjet to a fiery crash landing in a wheat field 2 weeks ago. Credit divine intervention for their survival. They had just taken off from St. Louis downtown airport. And tonight, Fox 2's Betsy Bruce brings us their incredible story.
By the time rescue crews reached the crash site, it was hard to believe anyone could have survived the landing. But 4 men walked away. A trail of debris in this wheat field south of Belleville marks the belly landing executed by pilot Shane Storz.
With having minimal maneuvering capability, I'd picked the best suitable field that I saw for time that was remaining with the least amount of altitude and time that we had.
Storz and his co-pilot Mike Walden have been hailed as heroes, but they look at the experience differently.
God was obviously with us through this whole thing.
The federal investigation into the crash of this business Learjet is still underway, but the pilots suspect birds flew into their engines at about 500 feet altitude.
We were in the departure mode, so right after takeoff, there's not a whole lot of time to maneuver the aircraft to dodge any type of bird activity.
We were coming down pretty good, so we hit pretty hard. I think that's where we got our back injuries and stuff from. As we were sliding along, I remember seeing fire off one side of the aircraft.
Co-pilot Walden got their 2 passengers out through an emergency exit, but the main exit was jammed. Yet pilot Storz got out that jammed door before flames engulfed the jet.
The only thing I can really know what happened is it was a miracle from God to send his angels, guardian angels, down to pull me from the wreckage.
Storz is recovering from a broken bone in his back. Walden is still sore. Despite their close call, both men are eager to be back flying. Betsy Bruce, Fox 2 News.
The 2 pilots see their survival as proof God was watching over them. They intend to share that story with others.
In a St. Clair County field are talking for the first time about their ordeal.
They tell Kara Caswell it is a miracle. They and their 2 passengers survived that fiery crash.
Pilot Shane Storz and Mike Walden know how lucky they are to be here today. Lucky to walk into an afternoon news conference after living through this fiery Learjet crash.
Oh, I thank God it's a miracle from heaven that everybody walked away with minor injury. I had lacerations on my forehead. My shirt was totally blood red, but I'd broken my back.
Storz was taking 2 St. Louis lawyers to Nebraska for a case when disaster struck.
Approximately 500 feet above ground, we had saw birds come into our view of the aircraft, and seconds later, we had lost. The right engine had totally quit.
Their best option, a crash belly landing in this wheat field.
We were coming down pretty good, so we hit pretty hard. I think that's where we got our back injuries and stuff from. As we were sliding along, I remember seeing fire off one side of the aircraft.
Mike had said that he had started back for me, and then I had come running around in the back of the aircraft. At that point, from what Mike had told me, the aircraft was totally engulfed in flames.
The passengers escaped with just minor scratches. Both have thanked the pilots personally for saving their lives. The pilots say the credit isn't theirs to take.
God saved our lives. I was the pilot behind the controls, but God guided us to the spot.
The pilots work for Multi-Aero based in Festus. When they are fully healed, both plan to go back into the cockpit. Both say surviving this brush with death has given them a new appreciation of life. The NTSB continues investigating the incident. Larry, Vicki.
Kara Caswell, it is an amazing story, isn't it?
Miracle anyone survived the Belleville plane crash earlier this month. The chief pilot is recovering from cuts to his face and a broken back, but blessed, he says, to be able to tell his story.
Knowing that who my maker was, I was ready to go. So as far as time to think about what was going to happen, I didn't have time to think about it.
Instead, Multi-Aero Chief Pilot Shane Storz says training and instinct kicked in as he first let the Learjet drift before bringing it down on its belly in a damp wheat field.
The aircraft spun around a little bit. I still saw some fire outside the aircraft. I could tell Shane had received some fairly serious injuries.
Storz, co-pilot Mike Walden, and 2 passengers were leaving the Metro East for Nebraska. Shortly after takeoff, the pair claims it lost both engines after running into a flock of birds. The exact cause remains under investigation. With Shane in shock and the fire spreading, Mike worked to get the passengers and himself out safely.
And then my concentration went on trying to get Shane, because he was, like I said, obviously the most hurt, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to get him out, but just due to circumstances, it was going to be very difficult for me to get him out of there. So basically, I was just kind of yelling at him, trying to get him oriented so that he could get himself out. And the first time I saw him, he was coming around from the opposite side of the aircraft, so I don't know how he got out.
And walked out through those flames. How Shane got out is another miracle. I'll share that with you at 6 o'clock. Near Belleville earlier this month are telling their story. It is an amazing story of survival and what they call a series of miracles. Chief Pilot Shane Storz and co-pilot Mike Walden slowly enter a hangar to meet with reporters. Still both in constant pain after their plane crashed near Belleville earlier this month. Storz recovering from deep cuts to his face and a broken back.
Oh, I thank God it's a miracle from heaven that everybody walked away with minor injury. I had lacerations on my forehead. My shirt was totally blood red, but I'd broken my back. But my co-pilot and passengers sustained minor injuries.
The NTSB is investigating the crash, but Storz and Walden believe they lost both engines when they flew into a flock of birds. The plane was leaving the Metro East for Nebraska. Storz guided the Lear to a soft wheat field, placing her on her belly.
And he flew the airplane all the way to the ground in the best available spot to what we had, and he just did a great job. And like he said, God was obviously with us through this whole thing.
With the plane in flames, Mike got the 2 passengers out through the back, and somehow Shane, in shock, was able to release a jammed door and escape from the front of the plane.
The only thing I can really know what happened is it was a miracle from God to send his angels, guardian angels, down to pull me from the wreckage.
And coming up tonight at 10 o'clock, more on the crash investigation. I'll sit down for a one-on-one interview with the flight crew for a personal talk about surviving that accident.
And co-pilot are still recovering from their injuries following a jet crash near Belleville earlier this month. Multi-Aero Chief Pilot Shane Storz and co-pilot Mike Walden sat down with News Channel 5's Deanne Lane to personally tell their story. Deanne?
Well, Karen, these 2 brave men do not consider themselves heroes. They say they're lucky thanks to what they call a series of miracles.
There it is.
Shane Storz keeps a scrapbook documenting many of the trips logged by this Learjet. November 12th seemed like any other, until shortly after leaving Parks Airport, they reportedly flew into a flock of birds, losing not one, but both engines. As flames shot out, Shane's instinct and training kicked in. He let the plane drift southward away from the homes and barns until he found a soft and sloping wheat field.
It was good enough for me. It looked good for the timing because I was out of speed and altitude, so it was the best choice that was in front of me at the time.
I didn't have any fear of dying. I didn't think I was going to die, but I remember having a thought, this is how people die.
Surrounded by fire, Walden safely got the passengers and himself out. Storz, in shock with a broken back, says that's when the second miracle occurred.
God brought his angels in and brought me out of that burning aircraft and had opened the door, because I have no recollection of how I personally got out of the aircraft.
And while Storz and Walden blame the birds, others close to the investigation point to possible compressor stall or fuel starvation.
We have properly serviced the aircraft prior to departure, but there again, it's under NTSB investigation. We wouldn't say anything inappropriate to distract from that.
With their lives changed forever, both men look forward to returning to the crash site, if for anything, some closure.
I'm just going to be more thankful than I've ever been. I'm going to start calling it thanks living. It's thanks living. I think we should be thankful every day.
It sure is, and both men say they cannot wait for the day they can be back at the controls. Mike?
Deanne, thanks.
Landing in St. Clair County, the pilot and co-pilot are speaking publicly about what happened.
Both of them say it was their faith that guided them to safety. Melanie Moon joins us now with the story. Melanie?
4 people were aboard the Learjet 24D that went down in a wheat field shortly after takeoff. Both pilots call the series of events that followed miracles from God. Looking at the charred remains of the multi-aero jet, it's hard to believe the 4 people on board literally walked away from the crash landing. 2 weeks later, the pilot and co-pilot, still recovering from back injuries, have only one person to thank.
To God be the glory. God saved our lives. I was the pilot behind the controls, but God guided us to the spot.
Pilot Shane Storz says shortly after taking off from Parks Airport near Cahokia, he lost power in both engines after apparently hitting a flock of birds.
With seconds remaining, I had chose a field for a landing spot, which was a wheat field.
We were coming down pretty good, so we hit pretty hard.
The plane then burst into flames as co-pilot Mike Walden helped get his 2 passengers to safety. But the fire and a jammed door kept him from getting to Shane, who was badly injured with head lacerations and a broken back.
Basically, I was just kind of yelling at him, trying to get him oriented so that he could get himself out. And the first time I saw him, he was coming around from the opposite side of the aircraft, so I don't know how he got out.
The only thing I can really know what happened is it was a miracle from God to send his angels, guardian angels, down to pull me from the wreckage.
The 2 passengers on board suffered no injuries, and both visited Shane Storz in the hospital to personally thank him. Now, the Multi-Aero Company is a family-based company out of Festus that has a fleet of about 5 aircraft. Rick?
Quite a story. Thanks.